All right, so I need for everyone to write down these notes, and please do that in your process journal. I'm going to get you to just take a picture and upload your notes on the Google Classroom. So today's topic is thesis statements, and the essential question is, what is a thesis and what is its function in my writing, or really with whatever you are creating? So a thesis statement is the main point of your argumentative piece. It's the point you are going to argue and support with your reasoning, evidence from research, if possible, counterclaims and rebuttals. But I know that a lot of you are saying, like, they're not really controversial topics. It is sort of just what it is. So we can talk about what exactly you need to include in terms of other perspectives when you are creating either your research paper or maybe some other sort of product that communicates your research in a real world sort of way. So the reason why it matters is that formal essays have thesis statements. Even if it's not a formal essay, any piece has a main point that they're trying to communicate with their audiences. That's what you saw in your research while you were summarizing. Here's the main point, or here's the main conclusion that these researchers drew, and here are the main points that support that. So without a main point, our arguments, our research findings might be disorganized. We might stray from the topic. We might include things that are not relevant. So thesis statements really organize your writing and make sure it's not about too many things. Some things to be aware of. It should be really specific and only introduce the claim or the main point that will be supported through the rest of your essay. No new point should be introduced unless they are working to prove the one overall point. And so this might be a little bit different from the way that you have written papers or developed thesis statements in the past. We're not going to do a 3-point thesis where you're like, I'm going to be discussing this point, and this point. Instead, it's just like, here's a conclusion that I drew, and we'll talk about how to format that. And then the rest of your product will be support for that. So it usually appears at the end of the first paragraph of your paper. You can state it separately or imply it in a visual argument. And as you begin writing or outlining, you may need to refine your thesis to make sure that the entire paper still supports it. So we're going to talk a little bit about the process of creating your thesis, and this is what you're going to actually do today. So your thesis is an answer in your own words to your research question, and that's what you've been working with the whole time. So let's just say my research question is, how has the history of dueling had a lasting impact on the culture of the American South? Well, I did a lot of research on this topic. And after doing a lot of research, I have come to the conclusion that the history of dueling has created a long-lasting legacy of class warfare, political volatility, and the embrace of toxic hierarchical structures. Now, I know that you have not seen the research to support this, but that's okay because I'm going to present to you the research to support this in either my presentation or in my website or in my podcast. I will sort of draw this conclusion. I'll show you what this conclusion is, and then the rest of the work will support this and use reasoning and evidence to show you that this is true. So right now, I know that this was sort of a short little lesson, but I want you to, as part of your notes, go back and answer this question: what is a thesis and what is its function in my writing? All right, so now that we've introduced phase 4, now that you have taken notes on thesis statements and their purpose, we're going to do a little workshopping in your process journals. So I want you to write a journal entry that comes up with 3 different options for thesis statements. And by options, I don't necessarily mean different answers. Your conclusions that you draw from your research are probably going to be kind of similar regardless. I want you to try to word them differently, see what wording is effective, see sort of, by sifting through your research, what can you synthesize as an answer to the research question? And it's okay. You don't have to go through and discuss all the details of your research, because remember, you're presenting those as reasoning and evidence in whatever it is that you are going to be creating. maybe a research paper, maybe a video, maybe a podcast, so those are things that we need to take into consideration. But for right now, we just want to know, what is it that you're going to argue, or what conclusion are you going to draw after answering that research question and finding research to support it over the past month and a half. So the only work that you are really doing today is taking notes on thesis statements. You're going to post your notes in the Google Classroom, and then you're going to do some workshopping of different potential thesis statements. And we will come together next class period to discuss those, choose which ones are the best, what are strengths and weaknesses in each, maybe even figuring out ways to combine good ideas from multiple, thesis drafts to create a really strong super thesis. Okay. So have these ready in your process journals, ready to go next class period. And then, of course, if you have questions, let me know. Shoot me an email.